And, of course, we're following developments right now in Libya. The big news, Muammar Gaddafi is no more. He has assumed room temperature. You know, it's one of the things that we've been talking about for weeks is the question of what happens next. And there have been a lot of people who've been talking about this in regard to the Arab Spring. How much of this has been pre-planned? What is our role? Why are we involved as we are? So I thought it would be important to bring aboard someone who's had a lot of expertise in this area. His most recent book is called The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East, in which he projected some of the things that are going on right now. And I'm talking about Dr. Walid Phares. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me today.
I first want to start by asking you, what are your thoughts on this day of Muammar Gaddafi, his death now, and is this a significant event in terms of all of the uprisings that have been going on in that region?
Well, first of all, historically, in the history of the Middle East, this is the end of a very long chapter, over 41 years of brutal dictatorship. This is a relic from the past, from the Cold War, from after the Cold War. Gaddafi was not just a dictator and oppressing his own people, but he also was behind a lot of terrorist activities against the United States, Pan Am tragedy, against the French, the Europeans, other Arabs. He fomented a coup in Africa. So basically, this is a logical end during the Arab Spring of a dictator. Having said that, let me say quickly, the issue is not his death that was coming, but the issue was basically is who is going to replace him, and that's a different chapter which will have to be addressed very thoroughly.
And this is where I want to delve into with you, because I know you have a lot of expertise in this area, and you've written extensively and talked extensively about this. One of my questions that I've raised at the very beginning of this, why is the U.S. and, of course, NATO, why is the involvement at this level as it has been without any assurance of what's coming next? Why? What's the end game here?
Well, that's probably the best question of the day. It's not about why the involvement in general, but it's why the involvement if we don't have a plan for after what happens. I mean, we have a consensus in Washington and in Europe that Gaddafi is a brutal dictator. That we know. And we have a consensus that if dictators are, bleeding their own people, we need to do something about it. Should it be minimal or maximal? What we don't have an answer for is, have we been partnering with the right people in Libya so that after this effort and the elimination of the regime, the crumbling of the regime, we're going to see the Libyan civil society moving steadily towards stability, freedom, peace, and democracy? I think not. I think that we have rushed to basically crumble Gaddafi. We've done a lot, and the United States has done really a big share here with NATO. The rebels on the ground, whom I'm going to be talking about in a second, are basically going to be able to become the new regime, and the question is, will the rebel move Libya from under one dictatorship to a transitional democracy or one authoritarian regime to another?
And I'm going to open this up to you as to how you want to answer this question, because I think the same question could be posed about Egypt. Because do you see a similarity there in the sense that we really don't know what the end game here is? We've basically rolled the dice, or we participated with people who have questionable interests and long-term plans for that part of the world.
Undoubtedly, we participated. I mean, even in Egypt or in Tunisia, but mostly in Egypt, we waited in the first few weeks while we were seeing the uprising, which was initially civil society. Young people, women, minorities, labor people, middle class, laptop, Facebook people, they were the first tens of thousands who took to the streets, and it is because of that that the international community established a sort of an umbrella. It told Mubarak and the armed forces, you don't touch civil society. When that happened, then the Muslim Brotherhood and their allies, the Salafists and the others, moved in, and because they are the best organized, the best funded, they became the engine of that revolution. And now they have bypassed the actual civil society secular forces, and they are heading towards becoming the main force and soon to be forming the government. So we sort of, by not partnering with the right civil society forces in the beginning in Egypt, sort of helped the Muslim Brotherhood to come. In Libya, it's more than just helping by not doing much. we actually crumbled the regime, opening the path for the rebels. But what we have not done is to partner within those rebels with those who could deliver a secular, democratic, humanist Libya. Remember, there was an incident, the assassination of a general who was a rebel general, Abdel Fattah Yunus. Well, this guy was supposed to become our partner to reorganize the army, opening up the system for democracy. He was eliminated by the Islamist militias. So that will give you an appetizer as to what lays ahead.
It certainly doesn't sound very good, and we want to continue this conversation by posing a question as it relates to the possibility of the same thing happening in Libya. We're having a conversation with Dr. Walid Phares about what's going on in Libya today with the death of Muammar Gaddafi and what comes next on News Talk 1110 WBT. What's happened here in terms of our dealings with Egypt and now with Libya? Is this an issue of incompetence, or is this an issue of a cooperation with a potential radical agenda in that part of the world?
Well, it's an issue of policy. Whatever the advisors would submit to policymakers and whatever has been chosen and selected as a policy will become a U.S. policy. U.S. policy in the region has been to wait for the dictators to be challenged enough, and if that force is strong enough to challenge them, then there was a period of wait. And then when that happened, we let go of those dictators. What we saw basically is that we have been partnering, practically speaking, with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, in Libya, and partially in Tunisia. And that is going to lead these forces to become the first ones. And when they do, they're going to form the governments. And when they do, they're going to have an access to the education ministries, to schools, which is going to lead those countries into more radicalization, not less radicalization.
Now, Dr. Phares, I've got to press in on that. You're actually saying we have intentionally cooperated with forces related to the Muslim Brotherhood in both of these situations.
Look, this is not even a secret. The advisors, research, who have presented those plans for our decision makers are not shy about it. They have been saying that the Muslim Brotherhood have changed, that we need to partner with them, we need to engage with them on the one hand. But on the other hand, we have seen that all those in civil societies who have sought support from our administration and our governments in Europe and elsewhere haven't received anything. Should it be the Copts of Egypt? Look how they are being treated. Should it be the secular element, the women's movement, the other entities which are in opposition to the Muslim Brotherhood? So the result of our policy was to empower the Muslim Brotherhood because there is a thinking that the Muslim Brotherhood are changing. That's the reason for why they thought it would be much better to partner with them.
Now, Dr. Phares, I've got to ask you here, I mean, this may sound like a crazy question. Are these people completely stupid? Because, I mean, here are people who I thought, well, I can't say that I thought this because I have lowered my expectations, but should there not be a level of understanding and wisdom and gravity to be able to grasp what these people are about? How is it that we've got people in our administration, and we heard this a few months ago, where the Muslim Brotherhood was referred to as a largely secular organization? What in the world's going on in our State Department and in this administration?
Well, the problem is that decision makers at many levels dealing with the region and with those issues rely on what? On the advice of academics. And in your area, there are a lot of Middle East studies, Islamic studies, academic, resources. All what you have to do is go and read those books and listen to their lectures. The Middle East studies community, the majority of it at least, in the United States has been for many years, decades, funded by what? By Sweden? No. It has received significant support from petrodollars, money from the Gulf. So the fact that Middle East studies experts, most of them in the academic world, have been basically the apologists for these regimes and these ideologies, don't be surprised that their results in terms of consulting with government is going to go into this direction.
I find this almost completely depressing to listen to. I don't have any reason to doubt what you're saying because this is exactly what I suspected. I want to just ask one final question of you in terms of people running for presidents. Is there any hope? Do you see anybody who has a grasp on the subject, who understands we're playing with fire here and would change course?
Look, in this situation, since we don't want to go political in this interview, I would say I would look at the platforms, at the agendas. The majority of those running have platforms which are very clear in saying that we need to identify the threat so we can fight it. And to identify the threat, you've got to focus on the ideology. We're not, fighting tactics here, and that ideology has to be defined as the jihadist. That's exactly what Al-Qaeda, what the Taliban, what Hezbollah on the other side of it are claiming. So first we begin by a good education of the American public. I think there is hope that some of these platforms are more educated than others.
Well, that's somewhat reassuring. Thanks very much for talking with us, Dr. Walid Phares, providing some perspective on what's going on now in Libya as we continue that conversation here on News Talk 1110.